Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 Community, the Answer to Many Problems. I apologize on my tardiness in getting this video out, but life happens and it kind of kept me from recording for a while. So now I'm back, and I wanted to go over community because I keep saying that it's the answer to this problem or that problem, but I never really gave practical ideas on how to go about it. So that's what I wanted to do today. So a lot of the problems you're all aware of. I mean, you look at social media, you look at the news, whatever you look at, you see it all. Inflation's coming, even though the Fed says that it's not. The stock markets are anticipating it. And if you just look at the prices of things, the price of building materials is up. Um, Things like OSB and I think 2x4s were just a couple that I looked at, and they're up by like 50% or more compared to this time last year. Um, I'm hearing that builders are refusing to build smaller houses, that they're looking at like $400,000 plus to make it worth their while. We're seeing attacks from every direction on the First Amendment, and especially now with the Second Amendment. And yeah, the shooting in Colorado the other day has led to more push, despite the fact that he was not a law abiding citizen. He was a refugee, he was a Syrian, he was a Muslim, and we'd just bombed his country a couple days before that, or a week before that. And then we wonder why a Muslim with ISIS sympathies from Syria goes and kills people. So, no, gun laws are not going to fix that. But Democrats, communists, they don't care. So, they're coming for the Second Amendment, and what that looks like could be many different things. They could, the worst case scenario is they go door to door. Now, a lot of people say, "Oh, they'll never do that." Yeah, they might. They tried it during Hurricane Katrina. This disarmed a lot of people that way. I'm trying to think of. I don't think there's been another example in the U.S. of them going door to door. But, it's a possibility, however faint that might be. But they could do it through other ways, whether it be through insurance, health checks, threatening to take your kids, fines, taxes, whatever. There's a lot of different ways they could attack and take your guns without actually having to come pry them out of your hands. We're seeing the open borders policy that is allowing, they're not they're not immigrants, they're not migrants, they're illegal aliens pouring across the border. And many of them bring diseases and parasites and other things that they have from the countries that they're in, and they're bringing them here where we aren't prepared for them. So, they're also going to be uh, taking a lot of jobs that would be open to U.S. citizens. However humble those jobs might be, a job is a job, and unemployment is extremely high still from the coronavirus, the China virus. So that's a potential problem. Then we've got things like the Vatican banning the Latin Mass and private masses at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. It's easier to focus maybe on the things at home where politics are kind of taking over things and see the problems with the political sphere. But our faith and the church are having just as many problems: the confusion, the, the lack of clarifications, and then the outright head scratches here like this. So we're not immune spiritually any more than we are politically. And kind of tying back into the politics part of it is just the absolute breakdown of governance. We've seen that we have no avenue now to obtain a redress of grievances or to have our voices heard. We're being kicked off social media. Um, we're being censored everywhere. Our elected officials that we entrust with our trust to do what's best for us have time and time and time again backstabbed us. But then for some reason, they come back promising that they're going to do this or that or the other thing, and we put them back in office only to watch them do it again. And I think we can see where that's gotten us. Choosing the lesser of two evils has been a long time practice and for many people over the last 30 years. I think we've seen that that doesn't work. We've seen that the presidency is now turned to executive orders in many cases. There's been more executive orders now than anybody else has ever signed. And there's no check and balance between Congress, the Senate, and the presidency. And the Supreme Court has shown an absolute lack of courage and duty to their oaths that they took. As far as I'm concerned, the only one who's done or fulfilled his oath has been Justice Thomas. The rest of them really should have been retired a long time ago. So, those are our checks and balances and the places that we should be able to go one direction or another to get these problems fixed. But all of them have failed us. All of them are corrupt. So, yeah, there's a lot of problems out there. So, to be the answer to these problems for community to be that answer, I've talked to a lot of people over the last, it's been about 7 years since I've been really trying to find a way to make community work and figuring out how that really fits, how to make it work. I've seen other communities try and fail due to different things, but so how do you convince people to want to build a community? And many of the difficulties that have been told to me over time are they don't want to leave their job, or they don't think they can because they don't want to risk their job security or their tenure or seniority. They talk about not wanting to leave their family. Those who have kids in schools where they like the schools, they don't want to leave the schools. They worry about the quality of life, having to take less money, maybe spend more time working a homestead or something like that. And basically what it comes down to is the sacrifice and being uncomfortable. And I'm not judging anybody because everybody has their own reasons and everybody's called to do different things in their vocations and in life. But for some people that I've talked to, I include myself in that too. When it comes down to making difficult decisions, sometimes it's the sacrifice or the threat of being uncomfortable that keeps us from making meaningful change. So if you can overcome all that, how do you go about deciding where to start your community? So some of the things that I've come across when I look at different states is, if you move to a heavy blue state, the chances of you turning that around are, basically zero. So to me, you got to look for a state that is usually more conservative. Sometimes the religious makeup of the state can kind of give you an idea of which way people would lean or continue to lean. Another thing I've noticed is that unions, big universities, those two things tend to, liberalism, communism, Democrats. Um, so just a random example, you take a state like Wisconsin, which on the whole is largely a conservative state, but there's a lot of union jobs especially like in the Green Bay area, the Milwaukee Madison area, where there's also the university, and those were the counties and the cities where this past election there were a lot of irregularities, and also that swung the state to vote Democrat. So I think those are big things to take into consideration. If you can find a state that doesn't have as many unions, or a county that doesn't have as many unions, or and then the same with a university, then you're more likely to be able to keep that state conservative. Another thing I like to look at are the taxes. There are certain states where taxes are easier, and since basically all forms of taxation are theft, the less the money they're stealing, the better. So once I find a state that I'm interested in, then I start looking at the county level. And one thing to consider would be the sheriff of the county. I believe there's a website for constitutional sheriffs that you can look up, and it tells you where each sheriff is from and the if they've signed on to the idea of only promoting the Constitution and um, keeping us free. And the county sheriff is an elected position, and he's also the top law officer in the county, and he does have the power to tell somebody like the FBI to take a hike if he doesn't want them in his county. He does have that authority. At least in I know that's the case in many states. I don't know, maybe the state constitutions vary on that point. I'd have to look that up. So it's interesting. I never thought about that before, so I'll have to look into that. The other thing is to either find or start a good mass. Um, in my opinion, my personal preference is the traditional Latin mass, and not everywhere has one. And so you may have to, if that's the way you lean, then you need to start one. And I believe that the rule still states that if 10 separate households, it has to be 10 separate addresses, request a Latin Mass at a parish, that the bishop must give them one. That doesn't mean it has to be at a convenient time. It doesn't mean that he has to give you a daily Mass, but I believe it means that they have to give you the at least the Sundays and holy days of obligation. Um, that's going to be harder to do in some dioceses. Dioceses. I can't. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Um, than others, so that could be a consideration. And there's various orders that will say the Latin Mass, and if invited by the bishop, would be more than happy to take over a church or a parish. But one of the things that I find is that some of those orders have a lot of Europeans, and they just don't have a good grasp of what America is and who we are as a people, what we hold dear, and it can make it difficult to get good spiritual advice on how to deal with the problems that are unique to America because of who we are. So again, those are just my preferences, and you'll have your own. And the most important thing is to find good holy priest and keep things the way they should be. The reverence and the traditional Catholic teachings. The other thing is once you get there is you got to get into the local politics. So learning about how the counties are run, um, school boards, county advisory boards. Um, I guess I'm not sure of all the positions that might be there, but it would need to be a place where you'd be willing to get into them, whether that's either running for office or supporting somebody else for an office. So, how do you go about preparing for the move? Maybe you can't move right now. It's the only time that it's too late is when you never get around to it. So, if you're like me, you're not in a position where you can just pick a spot and pick up everything and go. So, maybe it requires some more planning. So, here's some ideas that I came up with for myself and that I thought maybe would be helpful to others to prepare for the time when you can move to a better place. So, number one would for me is obviously to get out of debt because debt can hold us back when even when other things are all when the stars align on everything else, debt can really crash us. So get out of debt. The other thing is to save money, whether that's not eating out as much, whether that's finding ways to have fun that are free rather than having to pay for them. Um, making your own coffee instead of going to a coffee shop. Um, there's different ways. Maybe you take up couponing, or I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different ideas of how you can save money, and you can start putting that towards a down payment for a property or for a hotel room or something where you can move to the place you want to be and then look from there, find a job, and go from there. Another thing you could do is to learn some new skills. Um, Things that might help you if you were to live in a rural Catholic community, knowing how to can, knowing how to hunt, knowing how to fish, to clean animals, to butcher animals, just learning how to garden if you don't know how to garden. Growing a couple tomato plants are some of the easiest, simplest ways to do it and get a whole bunch of tomatoes out of just a couple plants. Um, so maybe, isn't just for the women, but for guys too. Sewing if you're single and you're a bachelor, you're living out in the middle of nowhere. You might need to know how to put a button on a pair of pants or on a coat or something. So um, there's all sorts of things that starting fires, learning how to split wood. Um, there's a lot out there, regardless of whether you're a country boy or city person. I'm sure there's something more that we could all learn that could help us. Something that can help us get out of debt and save money is to pick up side jobs. There's if you search on YouTube or Google it, or you'll find all sorts of ideas out there. Um, there's affiliate marketing. There's if you have the ability to chop wood, you can sell firewood. You can mow lawns. You can shovel driveways. You can walk dogs. There's all sorts of things that you can pick up a few extra bucks, and those could go a long way. And if you've got kids and you're looking to move, maybe it's time to start homeschooling. And that takes the school part of the sacrifices out of the equation to an extent. I realize that it can be and is quite a sacrifice to homeschool your kids. I was homeschooled. I watched what my mom gave up to stay home and teach me and my brothers, and I know that it was a major sacrifice for her, and I certainly didn't make it easy on her, but I got the best education that I believe I could have gotten, much more than I would have gotten at a public school. And it gave us opportunities to explore other things and to have more life experiences in different areas. And we were lucky enough to be in a couple of different situations over the years where there was room for socialization, so we didn't have that stereotypical, um, you know, isolationist problem that many seem to portray homeschoolers having. But you know, start now, and then by the time you go to move, it'll already have a good handle on it. So, just some ideas for you. So, what can a community solve? And so, these are just some of the things that I came up with. If you pick a county and you get enough people moving to that county, it can become a sanctuary for Catholics and for patriots. You get good priests in there, they can help preserve the faith. You get a good sheriff in there and start getting good people in the offices. It can be a sanctuary for patriots. You can make it a Second Amendment sanctuary. You can make it a sanctuary for the unborn. Um, there's a lot you can do there to help make it a good place to live and to kind of make it a little island in the turmoil of the world. Some of the other things that a community could help solve maybe is the cost of living. If there's enough of you in the area, then maybe you could start a barter system of some kind to exchange services or goods. And instead of paying for things, you could just barter them. Maybe you could maybe you're not a hunter, but you could rent out your land or allow someone else to hunt on your land for a cut of the meat or in return for some canned goods. Maybe you could trade garden produce. Maybe one of you likes to garden but hates to farm, and the other one likes to farm and hates to garden. Maybe you could exchange fruits and vegetables for eggs and chickens or something. I think there's a lot of room there for to help each other out, to all pitch in, and to make life easier, and to really live a more simple lifestyle and help take the money equation out of it. Another thing it can help do is being able to take care of families in need or the disabled. And I think the tornadoes that hit Alabama and Georgia, I think it was Thursday night into Friday, is a good example of that. If you have a community and there's a tornado or a natural disaster that happens, you can help each other out um, by guarding each other's homes that got wrecked. So, to stop looting, you can help them start the cleanup. Maybe some of you are good with carpentry, and maybe you can help them rebuild. Maybe you can help take care of their animals or take in the families who need a home. If someone's sick, you could bring meals, you could help take care of them, you could help take care of their animals if they have to go to the hospital for a period of time, making meals. There's all sorts of things. I mean, this guy's the limit about what you can do. I guess I kind of already touched on the help in the event of an emergency or disaster part. Um, and then being able to rely on your neighbors instead of the government for things. If food shortages or healthcare help, whatever, if you can help each other through that, then the government's less involved in your life, and that's usually a good thing, if not always a good thing. Another thing is if you're in the same county, there's enough room for you to have your elbow room, but at the same time, if whether it's a natural or man-made disaster or riots, looting, whatever the case may be, you're close enough that you could provide aid to each other to keep each other safe and to protect your property and your rights. So I think there's a lot there that community can solve, and that's certainly not an exhaustive list. So use your imagination. There's more things than I've got here that that will work. So with that, I realize I went way over time again, but considering I didn't do a video for 2 weeks, I don't, if we average it out, but I'm still kind of hitting that time. So anyways, hopefully this helps you guys out and gives you some ideas, things to think about. And I will hopefully be back with a video before Easter. We'll see. I'll try and put one together early in the week rather than waiting till the end of the week. Hope I get time to record. So thanks for stopping by. God bless. God bless the USA. And I will catch you the next time.